Good evening, Goodland Community Church. We're glad for anybody that will stop in and take a look at our Wednesday night kind of midweek Bible study. We're going to be in Matthew chapter 7 this evening, and I hope you're excited to dive into God's Word. We're going to keep this kind of short. Hopefully, I can keep this within 20 minutes, but 20 minutes on pastor time, so we'll see how it goes. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope you had a great Easter. We did. We really enjoyed it. Time with three of our boys, and really had a great time. We cooked a big breakfast and a large dinner, and kind of skipped lunch and goofed around all afternoon in between. So we've been trying to make the best of our cooped up situation. We're gonna continue to try to touch base with you. I've been doing the daily encouragements. Those have been, if you've been watching them, have been pretty horrific, let's be honest. But we want to make sure that I'm checking in with you guys each day with a verse. And then we want our Wednesday night and our Sunday morning. Our Wednesday nights designed to be a little bit different. Those of you who come on Wednesday nights know a little bit. I've changed it up a little bit. We're not going to continue in the book of Acts until we get back, because I want to do some hands-on things with that. But I come across, if you look behind me, Debbie's been home now for over a week, and we've been busy at work. We've been painting and doing different things in the house to entertain ourselves. And but I had to rearrange my bookshelf back there, and I came across a book I bought probably 20 years ago, written by Joey Fan. And it was the premise was Getting Back to Mayberry, I think is the title. And he went through, and he had, I don't know, 15 or 20 chapters, and each chapter he dealt with a different episode of the Andy Griffith Show. I don't remember. I'm sure all of you guys remember the Andy Griffith Show. It's personally one of my favorites. I still go back and watch them. I like to look at them on the new streaming services. You can get them and watch them, so I like to watch an episode or two. And the innocence of that time was really kind of fun to watch, and it's kind of throwback when things were a little bit slower and traditional values ruled. There was a particular episode that sticks out in my mind, and it was probably one of the early ones when Opie was just a little guy, and what a cute little actor he was. And the premise of the story was Annabelle, or somebody, can't remember her name, came and talked to Andy about a fundraiser, a charity they do each year, a couple times a year, for those in need in their community. And Andy kind of mentioned to her, yeah, it's, I said, my boy Opie is probably one of the best givers. And she's kind of hemmed and hawed a little bit. And he said, well, what's the problem? And she said, well, he only gave about 3 cents, and the lowest other giver we had was about 5 cents, and that was from somebody that was, come from a poor household. Well, then Andy was upset, rightfully so, that his son had only given 3 cents. And so Opie would come by the office. Andy would call him Money Bags or Diamond Jim or whatever little nicknames he had for him. Then at dinner that night, they had a discussion about it. And Andy was saying, hey, how come you're not giving the proper amount? He says, are you holding back, saving money for whatever you want? And Opie says, well, he says, you should be giving. And Opie says, well, no, I'm not spending it on candy. I'm not this and that. And so he gets frustrated. Andy gets frustrated with Opie and sends him to his room. And Aunt B intercedes, she always did, and said, weren't you a little tough on the boy? And, you didn't really ask him why. You just kind of sent him. You're more embarrassed because you're the sheriff, and the sheriff's son's not given a bigger amount. And so you're worried about how you look in people's eyes rather than really a teaching moment for Opie. And so he takes a moment and thinks about it and calls Opie back down and says, I'm sorry, son, you should give what you want to give, and it's not about how we look for people, and kind of that kind of spiel. And he says, he says, but, what's your plans for giving? He says, well, I'm saving all my money. And he says, well, what are you saving for? And I'm saving to give a friend of mine a coat. because hers is all worn out and she can't afford to get a new one. Well, then that's the crux of the story, right? Opie's saving, can't give to the charity because he's doing charity on his own, is really doing what Andy wanted him to do, saving all his money rather than just giving a small amount to give. Andy prejudged Opie's motivations, that Opie was saving for a toy or something that Opie wanted, rather than understanding that Opie was doing something far greater. And tonight's passage in Matthew chapter 7, verses 1 through 5, Jesus is talking about judging and the impact that judging, when we judge wrongly, has on ourselves and on others. So we're going to look at 3 points in the story. But before we get into the judging, I want to make sure that we understand that we have to make judgments every day about what goes on around us, right? So this isn't. We need to make sure that we're looking at issues, or we're looking at people, and this is really what was driving Jesus' discussion here, is that we don't prejudge people. I'll give you a quick example. When I was first in youth ministry, I had a young man that became a believer, and he was I think he was a freshman in high school, and he just become saved, and he was excited about it, and he had a girlfriend in the youth group there at the church, and he was just excited about his faith. And so, but he was a fun, loving kid, and really neat to see. And he dyed his hair electric blue one day. Why, I don't know. And so he comes into church that Sunday, and his hair is electric blue, and it's bright. And he rolls on down and sits like in the second row from the front. And I had a deacon at the time come and say, hey, what's that kid doing? He's here kind of disrupting the service. He's singing, and was kind of irritated with it and didn't really know what to think of him. And so I had explained to him that he was a new believer. So this deacon of the church, leader of the church, wasn't following the guidelines, prejudged this young man. I'm going to come back to his story in a little bit, but let's read our passage this evening. We're in Matthew chapter 7, verse 1 through 5. Matthew chapter 5 through most of chapter 7 is what we call the Sermon on the Mount. It's a sermon by Jesus, and he hits so many topics. And this is one of the ones that he hits. He wants to make sure throughout this discussion that we're, and really a passion of mine and us, I think leadership here at Goodland Community Church, is that we're authentic believers, that we're not just believers in name only, that it's much more, that it's a deep relationship, and that we're trying to get better every day. And if you look at each of the subjects Jesus talks about, judging being one of them, is really to ferret out our insincerity in our faith, or our insincerity in how we follow of God. Let's read our passage this evening. Excuse me, I don't have COVID, just a little frog in the throat. It says this: judge not, that you will not be judged. For with the judgment you pronounce, you will be judged, and with the measure you use it, it will be measured to you. Why do you see the speck in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me take that speck out of your eye, when there is a log in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the log out of your own eye, then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. Do not we want to go in verse 6. Let's stop right there. So one of the things that we need to think about is that we don't judge based on our sense of right or wrong. A lot of times we prejudge people on our sense of what they're doing wrong. We don't understand the dynamic of what's going on. The young man I talked about with the blue hair, or Andy with Opie, and you can probably think about your own experience in this. We have that prejudgment, initial judgment. Hey, that ruffian's coming in here, and we're not focused on, hey, when people come into the church, we want them to hear the gospel, start that relationship with God. That's not our. Often it's like, are we messing up church service? Is he going to be a disruption? That hair is just so odd that we can't. It's going to disrupt what we're doing. And it's really about us rather than about the person we're judging. That's what Jesus is saying. Look, that speck. You see something wrong with somebody else, but you gotta, and literally the imagery in the original language of this, you're looking for a speck, a tiny thing that we'd have to look really close. We're not allowed to, social distancing, right? I'm getting a little too close to the camera. Excuse me. We're looking for that little speck in our person that we're judging's eye, when we have basically a 2x4, an 8-foot long 2x4 hanging out of our face. That literally is the kind of context of what it says, when we got a log hanging out of our eye. That's what he's meaning, something big. And our mindset would be a big, long pole. And the contrast is, what are you worried about him? You deal with your own problems and before you deal with his. My lovely and gracious wife, Debbie, is a diamond grader. And one of the things that she does is she makes judgments. She's gone to school, has a degree, it's very rare to get, in diamond grading. So she has the ability to look at diamonds and make judgments about diamonds. And that's one of her keys, skills that she's used in the past. She's retired now, but in the past, in her business, it was very important. She makes those judgments about people. Jesus is saying here is we're not to make, just blankly say we're not making judgments. We're not allowed to make judgments about people or about things. But what we need to do is have the right context before we make those judgments, that we need to be set up right. Look at verses 1 and 2. Let's read them again. It says, "Judge not that you will be, that you not be judged. For with the judgment you pronounce, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you." Jesus is saying, look, be careful of the judgment you dish out, because the same level of judgment you use and the same framework that you use will probably be used on you. So if you're just arbitrarily judging people without understanding context, situation, and what's going on, then that same context can be done to you. And if it's done to you, you'll say that's unfair, but we do it to other people and it's okay. You're saying, look, be careful how you judge, because that same type of judgment is going to be used. It's okay to judge. We're struggling with, and personally I'm struggling with the judgment of our governor and the, I'm going to say it, draconian limits that she's put on our movement. She doesn't have the right to tell us that we can't go see family members. I have a 77-year-old father. If I think I need to check on him, I'm going to do that. And I know it's not legally what we're supposed to do, but it's our right from the Constitution. But some of what she's done is meant to keep us safe. And we can debate that and have judgments about that, right? We're trying to make a judgment, a way of safety versus freedom, right? And so that's kind of gotten out of whack. A lot of us feel like that religious liberty and things have been cut down, or civil liberties are being sacrificed at the altar of so-called safety for the community. But yet we're worried about safety for the community, but yet we allow abortions to continue. That's essential, killing babies. We're going to kill more babies in America than people are going to die of COVID-19. I'm not saying we shouldn't do social distancing or maybe have a lockdown. I'm not arguing for that. I'm just saying it's interesting, the judgments. She says, well, just do as I say, without assessing that. These kind of judgments, when we look and make assessments, that's, again, not what the passage is driving home here. We're saying, look, just be careful. We're going to make those judgments. We want to hold Governor Whitmer to the same standard we hold President Trump. We're going to hold this idea of judging is really not our forte. Shouldn't be what we look to do. We can't just say, well, I don't like President Trump, so he's not doing the right thing, but Governor Whitmer is, or I don't like Whitmer and Trump's doing, we don't want to get into that comparison. And it's really, I think this passage is very applicable to us today, because we want to give people the benefit of the doubt. But yet, on the same hand, we don't want to just roll over and let our civil liberties and our religious liberties, which have been trampled on, continue to be trampled on. So we can make those kind of judgments, but we just have to be careful of how we go about it. And we need to have, the idea is that it's, if we're judging others, that we have this personal superiority, that we're more important than the person that we're judging, right? That deacon could look down upon that young man and say, hey, he's not doing it right. We better do something about him, get him to the back row, or maybe we'll have a discussion out back so he doesn't disrupt the service. I don't like what the governor's doing. I don't like what the president's doing. Those are all judgments, right? So just got to be careful that we're not judging from what we think is more important, but what's right compared to what God says, and what's right compared to what we need to do. And so that's important. We got to be careful. The judgment we dish out will be dished back on us. Look at verses 3 and 4. It says, why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye, but not as the log that's your own eye? How can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when there's a log in your own eye? So let's get up there up close, right? And poke in his eye and take it out. We got a log there. You can't even get close enough because the log in your eye is knocking him around. It's a funny illustration. It really is humorous if you think about it. It's so opposite of what you think when we think of Jesus. It is, his teachings are deep and serious. This is a deep and serious things, but he adds an element of comedy here, of lightheartedness to something obvious. Obviously, it's not won't worry about the speck in your eye when we got to get surgery to get the log out of your own eye. Be careful how you go. And this is really the idea of self-examination. Are we examining ourselves? Or do we feel like before we judge that other person, have we challenged our own motives? Have we looked inside to make sure what we're accusing that person of, we're not guilty of ourselves? Think about Andy and Opie. Andy literally was guilty of what he was accusing Opie of doing. And so often the accuser is the one doing, is guilty of the same thing that they're accusing others of doing, of being mistreated for. And so we need to understand that. We've got 3 things here that I want to mention on this when we talk about self-examination. We need to realize that we've been forgiven and need to forgive others. We've been forgiven, and so we should forgive others. Sometimes that means we have to give others the benefit of the doubt. We need to examine our own life for flaws, for things that are hindering our walk with God or hurting others, and confess those and get those clear. And once we're ready, we can help others with their needs. And the idea of self-examination, we do it at communion, we do it often, is that we want to be accountable, not only to God, but to others. We want to be accountable to our family members. We want to be accountable. See, often when we have a log in our eye, we haven't been accountable to ourselves. We haven't been accountable to others. So we've kind of done our own way. We've done it our own way, our own style. And if we're not going to judge others, we're going to have the assessment to decipher right and wrong when situations are right. We need to make sure that we've looked at ourselves and our motivations aren't preemptive to position ourselves better. It's like a simple example of this is I don't like the Stankies. I'm not supposed to say the word in our house because it's a rule. I don't like the New York Yankees, the baseball team. We're allowed to call them the Evil Empire. I think one of the sports guys has called it Stankies for years. The New York Stankies. Don't like those. Dallas Cowboys, same way. Do not like either of those teams, right? So if the Lions or the Tigers are playing the Yankees or the Dallas Cowboys and we get a bad call from the umps, I assume they're for Dallas Cowboys, right? The referee or the umpire for the Yankees. I assume they're for that team, right? Because the Cowboys are America's team, so they always get the calls because they'd rather see them on TV than the Lions on TV. And so that's prejudging a ref when I have no basis for my thing other than I have a prejudice against anything that's Dallas Cowboys or New York Yankees. Right? This is the idea of self-examination. So when I go to a game and I hoot and holler at the refs or whatever because the Lions got a bad call, supposedly, maybe they did, maybe they didn't, but my prejudice against that holds that again. And that's what Christ is really telling us here. Don't have prejudice when you're making judgments about things, especially when it comes to people. We're too easy to make snap to judgment about certain people. The way they look different than us. Maybe they dress different than us. I can use some examples, and I know for certain age groups, certain ways are certain. We have certain things that we think things should be, and often we judge young people. If we're older, like me or older, we're going to judge young people in a different way. They should have fit into the way we think young people should be rather than the way young people are today sometimes. And so we have to be careful of that. So let's examine our motives before we make a snap to judgment. Sometimes we make a snap judgment. What we need to get out of the habit of is undoing that snap judgment and going back and say, well, why am I judging it like that? It doesn't mean, let's understand, because we want to understand this passage correctly. My wife is she is an expert at this, people reader. And I think I'm fairly well too, but she is really good at it. She can tell usually within 5 minutes or something, she can tell a lot about your personality and who you are and if you're going to be a troublemaker or whatever. She's just got an instinct for this, and she is spot on time and time again. But she doesn't come at it, and she doesn't even know I'm telling this story, but she doesn't come at it from a point of prejudice or preconceived ideas of what you are going to be or not going to be. She doesn't think of it that way. She just has this calculation that goes through, and it comes out, and very rarely is she wrong about how she can calculate how somebody's going to be. So making those kind of judgments, if your kind of thought process isn't to categorize somebody in a negative way, is not really what Christ is trying to drive home here. He's trying to make sure that we aren't being hypocrites, that as believers, that we're not out on the front lines going out there making judgments and making basically fools of ourselves and fools of Christianity because we're making all these knee-jerk reactions without having the facts, without understanding fully. We're letting personal biases get in the way of what we should or shouldn't do or how we should look at people. So that's important. Now look at verse 5. Look at the first two verses and be careful how you judge, because how you judge will be used against you. The second couple verses are about, hey, let's self-examine ourselves, because really when we self-examine, when we're judging somebody, there is a purpose to judging things, right? We're all going to be judged at some point, right? We have to make decisions based on, how we look, perceive, or people. Christ is saying, be careful, because when you make those judgments are going to come back to you. Second is your motivations. You get your self-motivations out of the way, and are we looking at this in a clear light? Because here's what it's really for. Look at verse 5. You hypocrite, first take the log out of your own eye, then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. I think this last thing is that we're to help other people escape from sin. Notice in this passage it would say, well, take your own log out and wander off. Because some people say, well, see, Jesus said not to judge others. That's not what he's saying. He's saying we're not supposed to just categorize people with prejudice. He's saying, look, clean up your own life and then help your brother in humility and love and kindness take the speck out of their eye. We still don't want them involved in sin, as we don't want you involved. Christ is saying, look, I don't want you involved in sin. And I don't want them involved in sin. And so let's get ourselves together, and then maybe we can help in a loving, kind way, help get this other person out of sin too. See, that's the process of judging. We're making judgments, and we have to make judgments, right? We can't not make judgments. We can't let, whether it's protecting the church or civil liberties or all these other things that we have to deal with now. We can't just say, well, we're not to judge other people, so we just have to sit here and take it. That's not what Christ is saying. He's saying just be careful how you go about this process, because there is good that comes out of it. And the good is that we cleanse ourselves, make ourselves stronger spiritually, but we get to help other people maybe work on some issues that they have and make themselves stronger spiritually. And that's really the goal at the end of the day. He's saying, look, judgments are going to happen all the time. Be careful how you judge. 3 things. It's coming back on you in a certain way. How you do it, it's going to come back to you the same way, probably. Make sure that you're ready, clean, and got your own personal biases out of the way, that we're looking at how God would look at this, how Christ would look and judge a situation or a person. And the third thing is it puts us in a position to help others get out of the slavery of sin. And that's really the goal for all of us, right? To live a Christ-like life, to live a holy life. And I hope that's your goal as you walk with Christ. I hope you're not frustrated by being cooped up. Hey, we miss everybody. I want to mention, too, I talked about that young man with the blue hair. You guys know him. He's the young man that preached for me when I was gone on vacation. That's Paul. He became a believer in high school. He was a dynamic believer. He's a fun-loving kid. As a high schooler, he was quite an adventure. He just had a ton of fun. He was able to bring all kinds of groups of people together. That blue hair is just part of his charm. He only had it for a week. He could wash it out anytime he wanted. He enjoyed it. Got a shock from his parents. Got a shock from everybody that he's seen. He loved it. Right? Got that attention. He, as a young man that grew to love Christ in a deep level, that deacon made a mistake in judging him that way, because you don't know who God's going to use. And it's not for us to prejudge those that are out there. I hope you're having a great day. I hope you're having a great week. Enjoy my nerdy, stupid little jokes on my daily encouragement. But more importantly, enjoy the verses that are coming. We're going to try to polish this up. Look forward to the sermon. If you got something out of this, you can pass this along to somebody else. You think somebody else will benefit from it, whether it's our Sunday morning sermons or these. We'd love for you to pass it around. We're hearing that so many people are checking in, not only with ours, but so many of the other churches that I'm talking to, and I know nationwide, people that haven't followed God in a long time, or maybe never, are looking to churches. And so these silly little videos that we're putting together, the very best we can, God is using in a powerful way. So I hope God is blessing you. I'm going to pray right now, and pray with me. Dear Heavenly Father, we humbly come before you. We're excited to be here. We're excited to study your word. Help us to be excited about it. Help us to learn from it. Help us to change our lives. We actually would give our governor and our president and all the leaders across the nation the wisdom to when to free us from these restrictions. Freedom is hard won, easily lost, and hard to give back. We actually would just put a fire in their belly to free us up, because we are smart and we can do things well to keep ourselves safe. Help them to understand that our safety isn't based upon what they know or they don't know, that ultimately our safety is based upon a relationship with you, that you are working in a powerful way through this situation, that we should be, as a country, turning to you and praying to you that you would continue to work in a powerful way, because we see in so many circumstances. Help all of us to understand that we aren't in control of our own destiny, that we aren't in control of when our end is. Help us to realize that and lean on you more and more every day as you continue to bless those out there. To bless the congregation of Goodland Community Church, bless Lapeer County and the state of Michigan. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thanks so much for being with us this evening. Like I said, I hope you enjoy this.